Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. So today in this video, I am going to work on the site monitoring application which I have been trying to build in public. And today what I am going to do is do a little bit of improvement on the code in terms of you know uh, slight refactoring that I have done. I'll show you the old code which was there and what I have modified because I thought I will just do that and show it to you rather than do it on screen because that is basically a refactoring. And then we will work on functionality where basically we are allowing the user to get the notification, and in that notification we will send a link which basically would change the state of that URL so that it becomes failing as false from true, and the next notification goes. So a quick recap, what are we doing so far? We have on our web.php this URL where we right now make a database call and get all the URLs that we want to monitor. So in my database, for example, right now I have two URLs. And out of that, what is going to happen is this particular URL, right, which is slash test. I know it is going to fail because my website doesn't have any such URL. So automatically, when this event is being triggered, right, there is a listener to this event. If you go to event service provider, which is inside your providers folder, right, inside the apps. So in here, as you can see, we have check URL, this event, and this event is being listened by check URL listener. So let us open that up. And in here, what we have done is obviously one line is log just for checking what is happening. And then we have a service, okay, URL checker, which we are importing from here. So this service check URL status function is called, and we are passing the URL row which we got during the event. Okay, so if I show you, see the entire URLs are being looped through, and we are passing the URL over here. That model is passed on to here because the event sends those parameters. So the check URL event has these public property $URL, right? So we get that, we pass it to the service, and this service is doing all the stuff like I have this micro time which is the start time. Then I make HTTP call, there's the total time, I get the total time over here, and then my logic starts, which is if my response is not okay. And as you can see, if failing is false, only then I notify the user, right? And even the entry to the URL failure table is happening only when the failing is false. Now, why have we done this? Because if it is failing, then it is fine, right? We should notify. So the thing is, we don't want to send too many notifications, and hence we have done this. So the idea here is that when the notification is sent, right, we will send a URL in that notification which will allow the user that when the user clicks that URL, the status of the failing, I mean, status of the URL from failing as false becomes, uh, I mean, here we have set it to true, right? So it becomes false again. And hence, next time when the monitoring event occurs, it will notify if there is an error. All right, so that is basically what we are trying to do. Now, before we jump in, I had one problem with the code initially. If I show you the old code, this is my broadcasting slash Zulip channel code base. And over here, the send method had the entire HTTP code over here, right? Now, obviously, this is something which is not really a very good thing to do, because you know the responsibility of sending or making an HTTP call the Zulip service and sending the appropriate data is not the work ideally of the channel. What I try to do is create a service called Zulip service, and this is aware of all the criticalities around communicating with Zulip server. So we have obfuscated that, and then the Zulip channel just gets the service class and it says that, hey, Zulip service notification. So the channel is not at all aware of what is happening in the scenes about how to communicate with Zulip or what is the authentication mechanism, so on and so forth. So what have we done to modify? Well, I can see that obviously this code, what is most important is the message. Right? This is the only thing which is going to change, because different notifications will like to send different kinds of messages. That's the whole idea, right? But apart from that, it is quite possible that kinds of notifications being sent to different channels, or yes, to different channels and different streams. In Zurich, what we call them is the to and the topic. I felt it made sense that perfectionist, which is my stream, is a variable, and the topic is also something that I will pass along with the message. So we have three variables that we can have in our parameter. But then, as you can see, there is one thing here as well, which is type. Now, 4 parameters honestly can be a little overwhelming. So what I did is, now I will show you the code. So if we go inside my services folder, we already had the URL checker, right? Now we have one more service called service. Now in this Zulip service, we have one method called message to stream. Okay, so the send message to automatically takes care of it, because now I can hard code. There is one more way of sending message, which is a private, a one-to-one communication. We can have that as a separate method. For now, I have simplified it. So then, the first thing is obviously the signature of the method is that I require 3 parameters: the message, the stream where I need to send it, the topic where I need to send it. Okay. With that, by the way, at any point, if you feel there is some confusion, if you're not able to follow, ping in the chat, because I have the chat open on my separate monitors. I am constantly watching that. If you feel there is something which you are not able to understand, just feel free to ping me, and I'll try to explain you in more details if that doesn't, if the current explanation doesn't work for you. Right. So what are we doing with the HTTP class? We set the base URI. So the base URI I was picking up from the config. I'm doing /API. The only thing is now simplified it. It's a variable. There is no difference if I keep this entire thing over here as well. But I'm just trying to get this code block as simplified as possible. Okay. Then obviously in the basic auth we have Zulip user and API key. So in here, what I have done is, again, 2 config variables. right? So config variables are being used over here, and the next part is obviously sending message. So we have as form, we make a post request. The post request sends the message to messages. As I said, type stream to the stream which is being set, topic, and the content. Right now, I'll just show you the message. I believe that there is a general notification message over here. Maybe I'll find a message over rather than and log it here rather inside the service. So right now in here, as I said, now is I'll have a little bit of logic around here so that I am able to URL where I am able to update the status of one URL, not notification, but a URL from failing true to failing false. How do we do that? Well, so the thing first to do is create a URL where we taking that action. So quickly set up a route. Let's just say we call this URL reactivate, and then we do a route model binding function request $request. Just simplify the import. Um, Over here, and I'll also get the URL. I should be able to get that. And over here, what we will do, write our code, which is reactivating the URL. But before doing that, I'll need to name this route. So let's call this URL reactivate because that's what it's doing. The implementation will come back to it, but this is the route which we need to target. So once we have this route, what we will need to do is to create the URL over here because this is where the message will be going from, right? Let me have a glass of water and then continue. So my YouTube still says there are no chats. I'll just confirm. No, I don't want to. Right, there are no chats, so we can continue. We need to create that URL first, which will be a temporary signed URL. I'm saying temporary because the URL should have an expiry. Otherwise, if you send an URL which is perpetual in nature, then what may someone may click on an older URL and reactivate, and I don't want that. It doesn't make sense. So we'll create a URL using the URL facade which is available, but problem over here is we already have URL as something. Okay. Temp signed route. Okay. When I will try to simplify this, import class as alias. Why don't we do it like this? So what happens in the import? Right, this is fine. Where is it? So temporary signed URL, the first parameter is the name, and the name basically is the route name, if I'm not wrong. String name. Yes, temporary signed URL, right? So the documentation I do, it is URL dot reactivate. Okay, and it, the second parameter is expiration. So it's a date interval or a date time interface, which means carbon should. So I do now add minutes and make it 30. Let's bring this down. First parameter, second parameter. Okay, and the third parameter is the, how do you say, array parameters, right? So what I will do is the URL will be this URL, URL, sorry, the ID of the URL, because this is how the model binding will happen. Why? My web route has this URL. So in here, I pass the ID. I think that's correct. Let's see. Everything should be quite clear once we get till this point. Event, I'm not sure if a diagram will work. Let's see. The dump was visible, so I'm sure. Right, right. So can you see this creates a URL? Okay, and if I go to this URL, what happens? I'm not able to go to that URL properly because I haven't copied that. Right now, nothing. But in my web.php, do dd of $URL. This is fine. And if I do this attributes, I can see this is correct. So first, as we are able to load the model, right, let's do some hygiene check. Because this is a signed URL, we will keep one check, which is if not $request, I think they validate signature, right? Then we should abort with a 401. Is 401 correct? Quickly see 401, I think is unauthorized. Status code, HTTP status code, right? That was something which I was looking for. These things are important. I would say, even if it takes a little bit of time, spend that time, because later on it is going to save you a lot of time. So 400 is bad request. That is not something which we want, because if the signature is failing, then it means there is something wrong with that signature. So I feel at this point 401 makes better sense. So we'll continue with that. All right. So the health check is done. At this point, if the signature is valid, what what is the only thing that we want to do? We want to say URL failing, it's false. And we save the URL and take the user back to the home page, maybe. Okay. So with this piece ready, and if we remove our diagram, we only have to change a little bit of our message in here so that that works, right? So maybe what I will do over here is $message equals get this entire thing, and then add, click here to reactivate reactivate the monitoring. We do soft wrap and we pass the URL we just created, right? And this is fine. Logger this. Let's look at our log file so far. What do we have? We have quite a few things. Clean it up. So web.php. Let's see what's the status of failing. Failing is 0. We have no entries in our failures table, so everything is clean. This URL will fail. I know that for sure. So the first thing is refresh. Okay, screen is white, no problem. In here, I have to see what happened to my soft wrap settings. But as you can see, the message is being printed. What is the message? It says the URL this Amitabh Roy slash test is not working. Please check soon. And click here to reactivate the monitoring. This is the URL. Fair enough. Failing has been set to 1. That is already the functionality that we had done. So nothing new. URL failures, this is being logged. But now, as you already know, if I refresh at this point, let's go to the log. You don't see any message for this URL, although it is failing, right? Why? Because we have this check over here. Where is notification? Not the notification. I think this is where the logic is. Because it fails, right? It doesn't create this URL failure entry. So we still have one entry over here. This is continuing to be 1, and nothing happens. But then we have this URL, right? So what will this URL do? Let's go to this URL in our browser. Why don't we just paste it over here, and we are redirected back to the home page. It is the home page, so I'm assuming our redirection worked. So the first check to do and see whether the code works or not is refresh this. Failing is set to 0. Means that whatever code we had written for that particular piece is working. Fair enough. And if that is the case, so URL failure is fine. At this point, I refresh this once more. Let me clear the log. It's a bit. Go to the log, and I see this notification. This is perfect, which means now the flow is completely fine, working like it should, where the notification is set. But then there's one more thing. You know, how much time have we spent? We are at around 23, and I think there is one more feature which we can tackle. I don't think it is too much as of now to call it a day. So maybe we'll have one more feature. Let's just see. Um, see, right now, the link, clicking on that link will definitely that status. But for some reason, let's just say by mistake, the email was missed, the notification was missed because maybe the people were a bit busy. And ideally, if the website is not reachable for certain amount of time because it's a problem, I would ideally like to send one notification. Now, what is the sweet point? We don't know. Let's assume for now that that sweet point is 5 minutes. Okay, that's the maximum which we will wait. No action has been taken by that time, and if the site is still failing, I feel right now that we should send one more notification. So how do we do that? Well, because the link is not getting clicked, right? I have to do some work to make that failing to 0, right? So the best thing at this point will be actually to write a cron, which changes the status. So let me try and do that. Create HP. What should be failing URLs? Okay, console commands and this. So what do we do over here? First thing is the signature. Let's keep it as URLs, clean, failing. That's about it. Okay, I'll add the description, whatever is required. Developer, he should or she should read up what the command is supposed to do. Here, the URLs, URL entries, maybe, which are failing. Maybe that's about it. Yeah. So this is what we will say. That is not the main thing. The idea over here is that we need entries which have been updated say 5 minutes back. Okay, because anything we should not pick because it hasn't crossed the 5 minute mark. We haven't given the team 5 minutes to clear up the problem. So say time equals now, it is present, subtract minutes. This is the time that we are interested in. We will get a few URLs where update at is less than or equal to $time, and we'll update all the entries failing equals 0. That's about it. That's the only thing which I want to do. At a time which is 5 minutes back from the current time. We get all the URLs which were updated at that point, and they are failing. Okay, maybe we will add where, yeah, should be added failing is 1, and then we change the status. So if I now run this command inside the terminal, HP and this, ideally nothing should happen because this time is not 5 minutes, or is it? 5 minutes happened. That's beautiful. Why don't we do one thing? Try once more. Right. Sorry. Failing is now 1. Okay. We'll add a dump as well. URLs equals this and dump URLs array, just to make the output a little better. And happen now. If I run that command, nothing up. What happened? Dump URL array. Oh, yes, I get it. It's an update command, right? It will not do that. So maybe to array, 2 queries running back to back. I know this is not something which will go into action, so don't worry about that. I just want to show you that again it is failing. What happened? Oh yeah, get. We'll do the get. I need to do it. Right now it is empty. Records found based on the current. updated at failing as 1. Why? Because although we have failing as 1, this is not 5 minutes within that range, right? If I do 51, that's more than 5 minutes. And once more, we have this is the entry that we are interested in. And now the failing goes back to 0. Very simple, but that's what we wanted. So the flow is scanner is, the monitor in all the URLs every minute. Let's just say it finds, okay, it says the screen current bit rate is lower than bit rate. Okay, if any one of you is facing a problem with the sound quality or the video quality of the stream, please let me know, because I won't understand. I'm not able to hear the audio which is coming from the screen. Okay. Yeah. What we are saying is the flow is obviously that the monitor is running it. It is taking all the URLs and it is raising the event that I need to scan it. As it's happening, everything is fine. If the response is not okay, right? Where am with that code notification? No, that's this service. We don't get a response of 200. The problem. So what happens is, if my status is not 200 and if the failing status, which means it is not currently in failing mode, then the first thing that we do is we notify. That's where we send the notification. We'll come to that, and then we make an entry as well that this URL failed at this ABC time. Set the fail true, save it, return false, end of matter. The notification. So inside the URL notification, we have all these things where we have the message. We are creating that signed URL, sending it to user so that if he clicks it, it automatically gets it. But then, as we said, if the user doesn't click it, we want to send one more notification, right? So this is where the cron comes into picture. This cron, I don't need it anymore. CRON will run and try to check what is the current situation. Okay, what is the, or how many URLs are there which are failing, and they were failing maybe 5 minutes. Okay, pick them up and we set their status back to normal, just so that the monitor picks it up again. That's the whole idea. Monitor is the decision maker. So for that, we are doing this. This cron will run, it will change that status, and we are back in the loop where we will send the notification and we'll wait for the user to click it. So that's about it, guys. That's what I wanted to cover in this video. 3 things: the refactoring, the signed business, and obviously the cron to set the status back so that the monitor picks it up. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. In the meantime, I will just quickly go through the code and try to commit things. So I'll give you that much time so that if there are any questions, feel free to ask them. And let me also run the pit vendor. Then okay, only one thing was fixed inside the routes file. Braces, curly braces, positions. Few things were cleared. Fine. This is nice. I'll need to automate this. A video that I have created. I'll have to implement that. Okay, web.php is fine. I'll continue to have this code inside my web.php later on. Later on, I'll move that to controller. That's fine. Simple. You can do whatever you want. once things are getting complicated. Okay, in here we have the business logic around signing the URL. Fine, the logger is not required. That is the reason I check the code before I commit. Okay, this is done. And this is one file, which is the CRON. This is very straightforward code. I don't see any problem over here, so this can go as well. So what have we done? Refactored. No, the refactoring was already there. So code to sign URL for notification and on change these about it. Right. I don't see any questions. Let me confirm on pre-stream as well. So right, there are no on the chat, so this is fine. We can close the stream now. Again, I would like to thank everyone who joined the stream, who were there. If you like this video, do click on the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And I'll try to bring one more stream where we do some functionality. Till that,